You've heard the story, peaceful, neutral, untouched by war. But what if that silence wasn't peace, but a strategy? Picture snow-capped mountains, not as symbols of serenity, but as silent guardians of secrets buried deep beneath. Behind Switzerland's stained-glass neutrality lies not innocence, but a system woven with secrecy and silent complicity. Declassified documents reveal a chilling truth hidden within the Swiss Alps: wartime banking collusion with the Nazis, forced sterilization of the undesirable, child labor disguised as charity, and psychiatric experiments on society's most vulnerable. These aren't stories from a distant dystopia. They're echoes from one of the world's richest and safest nations. How did Switzerland, a beacon of peace, quietly engage in these shadowy dealings? The answer lies not only in what was done, but in what was deliberately forgotten. To understand this mirage, we must look into a strategic form of detachment, a detachment that kept the country clean on the surface, yet dirty behind closed doors. Documents, sealed and stowed away, make one truth resound clear: Switzerland didn't maintain innocence, it perfected the art of silence. Switzerland's neutrality, imagined to be serene, was perhaps its most enduring deception, a peace procured through ambiguity, clever political maneuvering, and sometimes questionable alliances. Would you have resisted or complied? Echoes as we delve deeper, unsettling our perceptions. Tonight we uncover its shadowy past. Let us begin. They took their bodies, then erased their names. What if society decided some lives were disposable, not in words but in actions, hidden from the world? Welcome to a chapter of history that Switzerland hopes you'll overlook. Under the Alpine peaks, far from prying eyes, there existed a timeline where personal autonomy crumbled under the weight of state decisions. The victims weren't just numbers, they were teenage girls, disabled children, single mothers, each labeled unfit by a system eager to cleanse itself of perceived imperfections. Imagine a world where your worth is decided not by your dreams or deeds, but by a bureaucratic signature. It wasn't supposed to happen in a peaceful nation. Yet, this is the dark side of Switzerland. A place where eugenics didn't die with the Third Reich, but quietly thrived under new guises. In the cold logic of eugenic thought, forced sterilization, Switzerland took root. Between 1920 to 1980, thousands were stripped of their ability to procreate without consent, often under the guise of psychiatric care or social welfare. Sparse records speak of clinics where life's most private decisions were reshaped by clinical adjudications. According to declassified records, names of countless women simply vanished from genealogies, elaborates historian Thomas Honker. Their legacies erased, not by their will, but through a pen stroke. You might ask, how could this occur in the world's safest country? This wasn't the will of the populace, but the quiet decree of a government preserving a selective vision of purity. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. What came next targeted the youngest, not with blades, but with bureaucratic ink. The documents are as chilling as the stagnant air in forgotten archives. Here's the moral conundrum. What degree of silence must one uphold if peace requires sacrifice through silence? The snow might melt in the autumn, but we're left wondering, what other Swiss government scandals lurk beneath the ice? The state's grip on the body didn't end with women. As silence erased legacies from family trees, a new chapter of control unfolded, this time targeting the youngest. Not with surgical tools, but with signatures, not in clinics, but in quiet villages and distant farms. The machinery of exclusion adapted, shifting its focus from those deemed unfit to reproduce to those too young to resist. What began in sterile rooms would soon continue in the cold soil of Switzerland's countryside. Stolen as children, worked like slaves, Switzerland, celebrated for its order and calm, once hid a cruelty that preyed not on the powerful, but on the powerless. Beneath the surface of this Alpine nation lies a story of childhood stolen in plain sight. Thousands of children, torn from their families, were promised safety. What they received was servitude. From the late 19th century into the 1980s, Swiss authorities systematically removed children from homes deemed unfit. The justification? Welfare. The reality? Forced labor. These children were scattered across rural Switzerland, dispatched to farms and factories where affection was replaced by orders and playtime by punishment. They were called Verdingkinder, contract children, a term as bureaucratic as the injustice it masked. But this wasn't care, it was captivity under the guise of kindness. Declassified records speak of silent deals, paperwork that turned young lives into commodities. Survivors remember not toys, but tools, not laughter, but commands. Their childhoods didn't fade, they were stripped away, one season at a time. How could a nation so proud of its neutrality sanction such darkness? The answer lies not in cruelty alone, but in complacency, a society that trusted the system, a system that quietly profited from exploitation while branding it a social duty. Pause and consider, what is a childhood worth when traded like currency? In this chilling marketplace, innocence was exchanged for discipline, autonomy for obedience. Switzerland's veneer of serenity was upheld on the backs of children who were never meant to speak. And now, as the snow begins to thaw, their voices rise, whispers from the past, once buried beneath frost and forgetfulness, now echo through the valleys. This was no isolated mistake. It was a legacy crafted by silence. But for some, the story didn't end with stolen labor. When the fields grew quiet and the factories no longer needed them, many Verdingkinder were quietly redirected, this time into institutions. The state had another plan, cloaked once again in care. What began as exploitation would evolve into something colder, more calculated. Behind locked doors, a new chapter of control was written, not with contracts, but with syringes. If this story moved you, don't let it fade into the silence it came from. These were real children, stripped of their names, their voices, their futures. The least we can do is not look away. If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, click like. If you want to uncover more forgotten and dark histories, subscribe. It's not just support, it's remembrance. Let's continue. The patients who were never meant to survive. What if care felt like a cage, a place where the promise of healing turns sinister? It's not a story from a novel, but rather a reality hidden amid Switzerland's picturesque landscapes. Imagine asylums not as sanctuaries, but as repositories for forgotten souls. This is the hidden history Switzerland prefers not to unveil, where children were steered away from the path of life and thrust into shadows cast by ambition and secrecy. A chapter unravels where within the sanctified halls of Swiss institutions, healing was merely a word, a facade. Beneath snow-capped serenity, dubious experiments thrived, birthing tales haunting in their silence. What if those who promised salvation delivered despair instead? In other corners of the world, asylums were glimpses of redemption, but here they became conduits of systemic targeting of vulnerable individuals, ensuring only the strong emerged unscathed. From the 1940s through the shadowed years of the Cold War, Swiss asylums emerged as both tombs and laboratories. Records whisper of children, drugged, restrained, and erased from time. Some faced futures manipulated in the name of progress, sacrificed for insights the science of the era dared not admit. According to declassified records, the asylum's ledgers spoke of treatment, yet its pages were stained with empty promises. This wasn't mental asylum Switzerland history crafted from fiction. This was the bitter aesthetic of reality. Faint echoes, paint scenes, sterile rooms filled with an unsettling tranquility, where practitioners became puppeteers of one's destiny, their subjects mere marionettes in the grand act, known as behavior modification research. But this wasn't therapy, it was psychological engineering. Children and psychiatric patients were subjected to experimental regimens meant to reshape personality, obedience, and emotional response. Sensory deprivation, electroconvulsive shocks, chemical sedation, long-term isolation. These were not rare exceptions, but structured methods, often imposed without consent, oversight, or any path to protest. Some were drugged into passiveness, others broken under silence and repetition. Their minds were treated as empty slates for institutional control. The goal wasn't healing, it was uniformity. And those who didn't conform were erased quietly from the story. But can progress justify the cost? As secretive Cold War agendas intertwined with Swiss impassivity, truths veiled themselves beneath the Alpine quietude. One might ask, would society sanction these practices if hidden beneath the veneer of advancement? Pause and ponder. What right do we have to shape lives in secret, to experiment on the voiceless behind locked doors? This isn't just a violation, it's a profound betrayal. A stain that doesn't question innocence, but exposes the fragile line where science meets silence, and ethics are quietly erased. While some suffered in silence behind institutional walls, others were betrayed on a much grander scale by a nation that chose profit over principle. As syringes replaced care in asylums, vaults in Zurich clicked shut on fortunes stained with grief. Switzerland's cruelty didn't always wear a white coat. Sometimes it wore a suit and tie. What happened behind clinic doors found an echo in the marble halls of Swiss banks, where silence was currency and suffering was a collateral. The gold that smelled of blood. Imagine a golden fortress encircled by haunting shadows. Where wealth doesn't glitter, it darkens. Switzerland stood as an island of neutrality during the inferno of World War II. But within its borders, secrets festered. Contrary to its serene image, the living heart of the global banking system held chilling secrets. Not all neutrality is innocent. Sometimes it's an echo of complicity. During those dark times, Switzerland's banks became silent crime scenes of moral ambivalence. Swiss banks, Nazi collaboration casts an eerie shadow, one Switzerland hopes the world forgets. What if your sanctuary became a silent accomplice in chaos? Under the guise of peace, Swiss banks locked away more than just currency. They safeguarded suffering. During the 1940s, as the war raged, Switzerland's role was not as an unaffected neutral, but a silent player deeply intertwined with the unfolding tragedy. Within these walls of transactional silence and secure vaults lay gold, extracted from the nightmare of Nazi looting. Vaults in Zurich didn't merely hold riches, but profited off the suffering. Gold, extracted from persecution, locked away while the world burned. Jewish families disappeared, but their belongings stayed. Locked away in vaults, the keys buried with those who once owned them. Stories still speak of gold, stained with sorrow, hidden deep in mountains as cold and silent as the Alps. Contemplate the moral void. How could a bastion of neutrality harbor such secrets? To critique this Switzerland dark secrets means confronting Switzerland's silence during a time demanding action over apathy. Many ask how a nation of peace could endorse such wrongs, yet silence often screams loudest when bound with gold. What is the price of neutrality when bought with injustice? Switzerland's banks dared negotiate the terms of war and peace with blood-stained coins, leaving a lasting mark on Swiss history. But what other Swiss history secrets remain buried beneath these gilded facades? As snow reveals new truths, what will history reclaim? If gold could be stained by silence, then fire bore the screams of a darker past. Just as Switzerland's banks quietly negotiated with horror, its churches once struck deals with death. Long before vaults hid grief, pyres lit up the night sky, not to warm, but to warn. The currency of compliance shifted from coin to creed, and those who dissented didn't disappear into ledgers. They were consumed by flame. When Switzerland burned heretics alive, imagine a night where the cries of anguish were muffled by the crackling of fire, the flames consuming not just bodies, but belief itself. Switzerland's tales of tolerance melt away under the heat of forgotten terrors. How did a country now associated with peace once revel in the brutal enforcement of religious dogma? Grounded beneath the guise of neutrality is a Switzerland Reformation violence not easily forgotten, a time when a different Switzerland emerged, one where justice was cloaked in zealotry, not mercy. What image remains when peace is pierced by fear and fanaticism? Beneath the sculpted beauty of the Swiss landscape lies a past riddled with acts of ritual revenge. Executions not just in name, but in ghastly fervent practice. In the 16th century, during Europe's seismic shift amidst the Reformation, Switzerland wasn't merely a spectator, but an enforcer. Religious executions, Switzerland tell a story where discord led not to debate, but to death. Protestant zeal and Catholic fervor clashed where neutrality now resides, echoing with haunting reminders of drownings and burnings. According to declassified records, towns like Zurich were drenched not just in the blood of heretics, but in the ashes of dissent. The water's edge bore witness to moments where mercy drowned alongside the accused, under the watchful gaze of a nation preaching faith by the sword. What remains sacred when salvation demands silence and submission? Why did a nation professing serenity engage in such dark orchestrations? As belief systems collided, Switzerland cast aside the modern myth of refuge, embracing a zealotry that seared its banners. Stop and think. What does peace really cost when it's built on fear? This is where our understanding cracks, where violence wasn't driven by reason, but by faith twisted into punishment. It's a dark part of Switzerland's past, one that shaped the country using the ashes of forgotten lives. Execution wasn't simply death. It was a lesson to fortify conformity, a method to shackle thought within flames and water. The snow may cover all, yet beneath each thaw, Swiss history secrets emerge. Voices long silenced break ground, challenging us to question what truths remain frozen by choice or by fear. And if these flames of fanaticism feel eerily familiar, it's because they are. What happened to heretics in Switzerland was part of a wider, chilling pattern, the centuries-long war against those branded witches. We've explored that story before, the paranoia, the trials, the fires. If you haven't seen our video on the history of witchcraft, now is the time. It shows how fear, dressed as faith or reason, has always been eager to silence the different, the defiant, and the damned. The lie that still echoes. What if silence wasn't peace, but a carefully curated performance? As we peel back the layers of Switzerland's icy facade, what emerges isn't a single scandal, but a systemic pattern of suppression, of selective memory, of peace maintained through omission. These are not isolated incidents hidden in dusty archives. They are the bones beneath the snow. The truth was never lost. It was buried deliberately. Switzerland marketed itself as a sanctuary while acting as a silent broker of suffering. It sterilized the vulnerable, exploited the young, hid behind neutrality as gold soaked in grief flowed into its vaults. It burned those who believed differently and medicated away those who thought too freely. And even now, within sealed bunkers and redacted documents, the shadows shift. And if these revelations left you uneasy, you're not alone. What Switzerland did under the guise of care and order wasn't so different from what happened across the ocean. In another so-called sanctuary, America, scientists launched a program known as MK Ultra, where minds were not just studied but broken. Children, prisoners, and patients were turned into experiments in the name of control. If you want to understand how global the silence was, how widespread this war on the vulnerable became, watch our documentary on MK Ultra. It connects the dots in a world where secrecy wasn't the exception, but the system. See you there.